Yeah, yeah. So the only thing I've got that I am keeping an eye on is my son, who is currently sleeping.
Okay.
So hopefully he stays down.
Okay. Good luck with that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was looking forward to like hanging out with him. Like, you know what I mean? And we could both all
I know,
three dudes
I
talking about
know,
Charles Barkley. Like that happens all the time in America, right?
I know, I know.
Yo, welcome to my Summer Lair. I'm your host, Sammy
I am not a role model.
Younan. That was an excellent audio clip from the classic Charles Barkley Nike commercial from 1993. NBA player Charles Barkley argued that athletes should not be considered role models. Rather, parents should, raise their own kids. This debate still rages on like the Springfield tire fire on The Simpsons. Charles Barkley's 16-year NBA career effectively ended on December 8, 1999 with a left knee injury. And as my guest Timothy Bella points out, he remains wildly popular thanks to his often funny, usually irreverent work as a basketball analyst on what is considered the greatest sports show, not basketball show, sports show on television, Inside the NBA. Barkley joined Inside the NBA in 2000. At that point, it was just Ernie Johnson, the closest replacement to Mr. Rogers humanity could muster, and Kenny the Jet Smith, another retired NBA player. It's been 2 wonderful decades of Barkley on TV, which means there's an entire generation who do not know who he was as a player. Cue Barkley, a biography written by Timothy Bella, a staff writer for the Washington Post. Yeah, how cool is that? That's not a typical sports writer. I value that outsider perspective because it makes it easier to step back and see the whole of Barkley's careers, plural, and life. Typically in a sports biography, you expect to hear from people associated with the player, coaches, other teammates, maybe even sports journalists. But to give you a sense of how radical Barkley's life has been, yeah, Timothy Bella interviewed the expected people, but he also talked to Conan O'Brien, Roy Wood Jr., Chuck D, Billy Crystal, and DJ Jazzy Jeff. When have you ever heard or seen those prominent creators listed together? Like, yo. And as you hear in our conversation, it all makes sense. This My Summer Lair interview was so fun. I like Barkley a lot, and I appreciate that Tim's book humanizes Barkley. All too often, he's classified or dismissed as the TV big mouth. And he is, and I enjoy that part of him. Barkley's comments, the ones that go viral like that Nike role model commercial, serve as a constant and inspiring reminder. Sacred cows make delicious hamburgers. And if you know Barkley, then you know he's always hungry. Food is a fantastic way to kick off my conversation with Timothy Bella, specifically barbecue. Here's the first My Summer Lair episode that requires a bib.
Sound, the final frontier. My Summer Lair is an enterprise, a pop culture voyage with a continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new creators and celebrate established producers, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. And now here is your host, Sammy Younan.
I'm ready to go if you're ready to go to talk about Charles Wade Barkley.
I'm good to go, man. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to start here. Charles Barkley, he was born and raised in Leeds, Alabama. We're starting really from the beginning. Obviously, you did a lot of research for your Barkley book. The book's just called Barkley. But there's one part of your Leeds research I want to focus on. How is the barbecue in Leeds, Alabama?
Oh, man. It's so good. And as someone who grew up in Texas, I have very high standards for barbecue.
This is what I'm getting into, yeah.
Yeah. Their pork is good. Now, a beef in Texas will always be best, in my opinion. But once you get into the Southeast, it's really about pork, and they know how to do it right. So that, and they've got some really good pies there. There's a banana pie there, especially, that is just absolutely fantastic. Yeah, so highly recommended.
When you're talking about like pork, you're talking about like ribs or pulled pork, or what exactly are you talking about?
Pulled pork, and ribs. They're specifically the ribs are really top notch. But I got pulled pork my first time there, and then ribs second time. But I did get pie both times, though. I must know that, so
All right.
It's good. Yeah.
See, this is a good tip because like future journalists might be listening to this and they're like, I don't know if I should write a book or whatever, and like people overlook the barbecue aspect of like writing a sports book.
Yes. No, it's very important. If you are in the South and working on a book, be sure to know the best barbecue place around. This one in Leeds is called Rusty's Barbecue, so shout out to them.
By the way, before we kind of get deeper into your Barkley book, what are your barbecue sides? So as you said, you got some ribs. What are your sides?
I usually tended to stick with, if there is a good barbecue bean, I really like that as well. I'm also a potato salad guy too, but it's got to be right.
Yeah.
Because I've had a lot of bad potato salad in my life, so they got to get that right. And there's hope. It's got to be a pickle bar too. If there are no onions or pickles or extra bread included, I will always be skeptical about that.
Okay, these are good tips. All right.
Yeah.
Like we're learning a lot. That's the whole point of an interview, right? Is to like learn things. So
no one has asked me about barbecue through this entire stretch, so thank you very much for that, Sammy. This is great. Yeah.
I mean, like, I've never been to Leeds, Alabama, but I've been to like Nashville, like I've been to like Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, like so. I just wanted to kind of like start, like, you can't just talk about places like this. Like, I know you're from Texas and like you obviously did some time in Leeds, Alabama for this book. You can't just brush over the barbecue part. Like, this is vital.
It's crucial. Yeah, no, you should always know of like what they are good at too. Like I knew this place was good for their pork, their ribs, and you just got to take advantage of it, because I live outside DC and it's just there's nothing here.
I've been to DC as well, and it is disappointing for the barbecue. After having been to places like in Texas and like Nashville, as I said, DC is a little disappointing for barbecue.
Sure is.
But let's move off from barbecue. We can return back to it if you want at the end. But for now, I recently read Jeff Pearlman's Bo Jackson book, The Last Folk Hero. Bo, of course, shows up a couple of times, more than a few times actually, in your Barkley book. So Jeff's bio is mostly like a serious book, right? Bo had to overcome poverty and different setbacks to like finally arrive in the NFL and the MLB. Your sports bio, Barkley, it's really funny. Like, Charles Barkley's nicknames alone are like amazing. Were you laughing at all when you wrote this book?
So many of them.
Yeah, were you laughing when you wrote this book and had to include all these like wacky and funny, goofy nicknames?
Yeah, and I think that's what he's partially drew me to Chuck, is that for so long he has been this character, has taken on so many different names. I mean, he's Ali or Apollo Creed in some ways, in that he has more nicknames than just about anyone I know. But yeah, and you think of Charles Barkley, one of the first things you probably think of is fun, and it's one of my goals in this book was to take everybody back to see how he got to be that funny and how he kind of embraced it. Because at first, with his weight in Leeds, in Auburn, even in Philadelphia, he really did just kind of shy away from just being known as this fat guy. And I think eventually, once he started to get attention for just how incredible he was, he knew that people would be even more interested in a guy who looked like them, who enjoyed pizza even more than the average person, who just loved eating and was full of life and other foods. So I do think that was at least one goal in this book, was to just have fun with it, because naturally Charles Barkley is a very fun and funny guy, unlike maybe a Bo Jackson. And I agree, that book is fantastic. But yeah, they were two very different people, though, for sure.
Yeah, that's why I paralleled them. And like, two of the names that we're talking about that really cracked me up, and I never heard these in terms of Barkley until I read your fantastic book, was the Don Rickles of basketball, which is, that's perfect. Like, if you know who Don Rickles is, that should be on Charles Barkley's business card. And the other one was Fred Astaire and Orson Welles' body, which again is like, that is spot on. Like, if you, because I've seen him play in Philadelphia and in the Suns, and he exactly was Fred Astaire in Orson Welles' body.
Yeah, that's it's a really good one. He just he embraced those names too, and I know even at times when the 76ers would have these promos at their home games where fans who weighed over 250 pounds got in for free. And that's a real thing, by the way. That did happen his first couple years. Even when that happened, he was able to embrace it at that point, because he knew that he was on to something, just kind of being this common man in a sport where you see these guys just running up and down, these freak athletes who are all in shape, and then you see this guy who, don't get me wrong, for most standards, incredibly in shape as far as a runner goes, but you see him at the first and you're like, how the hell is that guy doing that? How is he skying over dudes who are 6 inches taller and just slam dunking on everyone and cussing them out? And like, how is he doing that? So he definitely had an appeal for his game, but his weight and his body type just added to that mystique, especially early on, Sammy.
To me, reading your book, and like, especially as you're going through college, as you said, they kind of highlighted his weight. Once he got to the Sixers, they started highlighting his weight again. Like, all those Charles Barkley nicknames, to me, that was the trailer, right? He was difficult to sum up. And I know a lot of them kind of centered around his weight, but it was also just about his skill, the round mound of rebounds and things like that as well. Like, he was difficult to just, like, he's this one guy. Like, Mr. T's easy to sum up. He's just this dude with chains, right? He's Mr. T. But with Barkley, he's difficult to sum up, and we've seen that with his TNT work and some of the comments he's made over the years. Not even just about the black stuff, but just like about the big old women in like San Antonio. Like, he's not easy to put into this box, and all those nicknames to me were the trailer. Like, you can kind of see where he was going to head, or where he was going to evolve to, based on the variety of the nicknames, because we've never seen something like that before.
Yeah, it's no secret that he has always been, 1, entertaining, 2, he will speak his mind, and 3, he's gonna make headlines. Like, as a reminder to everyone, he hasn't picked up a basketball or played in a basketball game since 2000. We're talking over 2 decades ago, and he is as relevant and as popular now than he ever has been.
Which is crazy.
And yeah, and you know, I do think part of that is honesty, and the fact that him and this American public, this worldwide public, has this relationship with Charles that since his time at Auburn is now at almost 4 decades. And I do think that people have a good understanding of who he is and where he comes from. And when he says things, he mostly comes from this place of love instead of hate. Now, don't get me wrong, he screws up, and he screws up a lot, and he does offend people, whether it be when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement or police brutality, or as you mentioned earlier, with the women of San Antonio.
Yeah, the big old women,
Yeah, and like, it's funny for a lot of people, but if you're not in on that joke, you would be like, how is he still getting away with all of this stuff and hasn't been canceled yet? Or how does he keep bouncing back? And I do think and the trust that the public has in Charles Barkley, and that he does really care about people, and he doesn't mean harm, at least most of the time, and that he has really taken on this role as everybody's crazy uncle who will say and do things that are going to offend you, that are just flat out wrong, but you're always going to come back to him because there is a feeling of love there.
I don't know if you watch Marvel movies or anything like that. I know your son is still a little young.
I do.
But he reminds me of Loki, right? The same kind of like mischief, the same like, you're not really quite sure what side he's on. The way that like Thor will sometimes say like, that guy's my brother. And then when somebody brings up Loki's record, he's like, well, he's adopted brother. You know what I mean? Like there's a little distance. It's like, because you can kind of see that with like Kenny sometimes with like, yeah, like Charles is my brother. Well, adopted brother. You know what I mean? Like there's that little gap or that little distance that he's got to put in. And that's what he reminds me of. It's kind of like Loki.
That's very fair, I think, because as you know, when he first got introduced to Loki, we were mostly viewing him as the antagonist. Obviously, in Avengers 1, that he was a big bad there, and then over time, we just got to love him, and he became one of us. And right. I do think in some ways that Charles is like that. I don't think it took people as long to actually get there, just because once he got over just being so angry toward his father and angry toward his high school teachers who failed him and forced him to not walk at his graduation. Once he finally let go of that anger years into his NBA life, he was finally able to fully embrace his funny and jovial side that we had seen of him in spurts. I do think following the incident in which he accidentally spit on a small girl in New Jersey, that was an event he almost did not come back from. He felt like his career was in jeopardy at that point in time, and he had to really re-examine himself and figure out, am I going to be this angry for the rest of my life? And once he realized that he could let go of that anger, then we were able to fully get the Charles Barkley that we have come to know and love, and who we've watched every week on TV for the last 2+ decades. But he was not always that way, though.
Yeah, and not just the fun and the jovial Barkley, but also he's an authentic Barkley as well. What I'm thinking of is that classic Nike commercial. I loved it when I was in high school. I'm not a role model. and he basically was saying, I'm not a role model. I'm just paid to wreak havoc on the basketball floor. Parents should be role model. He put it back on the kids. So you didn't even devote a whole chapter to this Nike ad, and some of the controversy that kind of created, some of the friction that it caused within the black communities and all kinds of things like that. Can you just unpack a little bit of how this Nike ad came to be?
Yeah, so there are two origins to this story. Charles said that it is something he went to Howard White at Nike about, this idea for the actual ad itself. So that is Charles' his way of saying it. But Jim Riswold, who was the creative genius at this firm in Portland that Nike used for these ads, said that he saw a version of this quote that Charles had said that same year, and he was struck by it, and then he came up with the idea and presented it to Charles. So there are these two countering stories here, but whoever is right created this ad that at that time resonated so much with the public because it came at a time when Charles Barkley was in the middle of the finest year of his NBA life. Not only did he win a gold medal in Barcelona, but he won the MVP in Phoenix, and he led that team to the NBA Finals. So he was at the peak of his powers. This guy who was probably number two behind Michael Jordan in a pecking order at that time. And here he is in a Nike ad saying, you might hook up to me, but I am not your damn role model. And that really struck a chord with so many people who for years and decades have thought of our sports heroes as the ultimate role models for children. And I do understand where he was trying to come from here, because he has often said that families should ultimately be the first role model for any child growing up, not an athlete who is prone to screw up, who you don't know either. So I do understand where he was coming from, but
that's why
boy, he started a culture where before culture were actually a thing.
Yeah.
Because now you had people just on both sides of this debate just going back and forth about the role of an athlete. Carl Malone even wrote an article in Sports Illustrated saying athletes should be role models. Like Vice President Dan Quayle was very supportive of Charles at that point in time. Like it turned into just a clash, and Charles did not expect to face that much blowback from it. But with hindsight being what it is, how could you not expect it? I mean, that's something that was going to happen no matter what. But Charles has always said that role model ad is still one of the it's the thing he is the most proud of in his NBA life, and people are still talking about it today. And I mean, it's incredible. It's a black and white ad that lasts under 20 seconds, and here we are still talking about it. So it's really a credit to him that 3 decades later, people are still talking about his role model ad.
Yeah, just to give it some context of what you're talking about, like, Kyrie recently got in trouble for posting an anti-Semitic documentary, and there was a lot of fallout for it. And obviously, this is completely different because it's related to anti-Semitism, so I get that part of it. But one of the things that was interesting was that like people like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and others were still writing articles today that like Kyrie's a role model and he shouldn't be posting these things, and like he should be a pillar of like, because he's a basketball player and like the kids are looking up to him. I'm like, we're still like, you know what I mean? Like still going through this cycle of like, what kind of an impact like does the athlete have for the kids, and like they got to be a good person and like all this kind of stuff. And like the end of that Nike ad, I'm not a role model, that Charles Barkley did, was like, I am paid to wreak havoc on the basketball floor. That's the one of the lines that he has in there. And he's right. Like, he was never paid to do, like, he had like weight clauses, obviously, but there's no like general like morality clauses, or like, you know, like if you get divorced, like you're a bad role model, you know what I mean? Like you lose a certain amount of money or whatever. Like there aren't those kind of things in there that like they paid him to do basketball and he was really good at it. And sometimes we kind of forget, and we try and, like you were saying, like put all this kind of extra pressure or extra like weight on these athletes to like be these like super duper like morality Mr. Rogers types when they're not.
Yeah, no, it's true. And for the record, I do think athletes have a responsibility of, if someone wants to look at them as a role model, that should be accepted, because once you hit a certain point and you are a public figure like that, it's part of the job.
Right.
It's part of the responsibility that you take on. Now, should they be a primary role model? No, I don't think so in that regard. But if this has been going on for a while, and then people do look up to these athletes, and it's going to keep happening that way, whether it's Kyrie or anyone else. So if there is that responsibility there, once you become this public figure, so it's going to keep happening. But I do think athletes now have a better understanding of that today, though.
And Barkley was especially inspiring to you. Can we go to your childhood, to little Timothy Bella? Why did you as a child like connect and look up to Charles Barkley?
In some ways, he looked like me. He was short. He was fat. He basically short and fat. And I knew I'm short. I'm like 5'10". He's still 6'4.5". So like, and so for average person standards, I'm still short. But still, just being someone who loved basketball and wanted to keep playing basketball, even though I was terrible at basketball, I knew I had to do one thing to just kind of stand out. And the one thing I could do was rebound, in part because I saw Charles Barkley use his big butt to get these rebounds. To mind you, he could jump in ways that I could only dream of, but he used his lower body in ways that I could actually use. So I would see that and I would use that and adapt it to my own game, and it worked out pretty well. So like, and as a big Rockets fan back then, I would see him come in with Phoenix and just boo the absolute hell out of him, even though I was patterning my game after his. And then once he got traded, he was my favorite guy after that. But yeah, so this project started off coming from a place of love and childhood and just remembering how much he meant to me back then. So that was definitely he's part of the inspiration for why I took on this book and why I wanted to write the most comprehensive biography that's been done on him so far.
Yeah, we don't, in terms of like NBA analysis on ESPN, TNT, all kinds of places, like we don't praise the big old butt enough. Like when Luka came into the league, I'm like, that guy has a big old butt. First couple of times I saw him, I'm like, he's going to be special, right? Like, because it clears up so much space.
Yeah, he's thick. He's special now. He's going to keep being special. I think the other guy in that same category is probably Zion. It's just a
big old butt.
Other thick guy who just is big, and if you can carry it and still be that special, it's even more incredible. Like Kyle Old, who's been a James Harden fan too, and like he's a thicker dude too. So like it can be done. And in a lot of ways, Charles showed people that it's not impossible. You just have to have discipline, and you just have to just stay focused. And now you see guys like Luka and Zion who are not like LeBron James in terms of just being that Adonis, but you don't have to be.
Yeah. And so that's you as a little kid, a little Timothy Bella looking up to Charles Barkley, and you got the big old butt, and you're clearing out things, and you're getting rebounds, which is great. I want to connect now you to adult Timothy Bella with Barkley, because you are not a traditional sports writer. You write for the Washington Post. I've seen articles you've written about Alex Jones and Trump, Washington Post. Your Post bio says you cover national and breaking news, policing, politics, and culture, which is exactly what Barkley covers on D&D: national and breaking news, policing, politics, and culture. Like, you guys are
copying me.
Yeah, you guys are walking the same beat. So did you connect or did you bond with Charles Barkley because of these similarities, especially as you got into the later chapters and he's on TNT and kind of talking about these exact same things, right? Like national breaking news, policing, politics, and culture. Did you bond or did you connect with Charles Barkley because you walk in the same beat?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd say bond, but I would say there are a lot of similarities in terms of our interests. I will say that what Charles, Ernie, Kenny, and Shaq have been able to do in terms of talking about things not related to basketball, whether it be politics or police brutality or Black Lives Matter, has been so important for not just other sports shows, but just everyone in media to see and consume, because it shows you that sports are connected to all of us in a variety of different ways. And when these other topics come up, they are inevitably going to come into sports because, like I mentioned earlier, some of these athletes are the biggest role models in the entire world. They are these huge public figures with these huge platforms. And to have someone like LeBron James or a Steph Curry speaking out on issues not related to basketball, it's big for people who might not be as familiar with what's going on in the world. I mean, if these guys are doing a big to people who don't know or who did not know as much about George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, it's really important, and I think a big part of that has come from inside the NBA just not being afraid to talk about any of that stuff in those big moments. So for me, in my work, I've always been interested in that. I don't think it goes hand in hand with what has happened on inside, but it is convenient that we do overlap on these same things, though.
Yeah, like you're saying, like sports is broader, and like you would think a book about Barkley would obviously cover his teammates, coaches, people that work in the NBA, and all that kind of stuff. But you talk to people like Conan O'Brien, Roy Wood Jr. Roy Wood's hilarious. This is a tangent. I met him at a comedy festival here in Toronto a few years back before the pandemic, and I got to talk to him about chicken nuggets. He and I both like chicken nuggets, so we had a good. And you talked to Chuck D, who obviously is a major sports fan. Like he showed up in like 30 for 30s and things like that. But again, it's just like this is just how big and broad Charles Barkley's world is, that like you could talk to Conan O'Brien, Roy Wood Jr., and Chuck D, as well as coaches and other players. And it, like this all makes sense in a Charles Barkley book or Charles Barkley life saga.
It all does, Sammy. I mean, in Conan's case, he talked to me for like 2 minutes, just like strictly on Charles Barkley's eyebrows and how incredible his eyebrows are as a comedic device. Like, it's just, and in Chuck D's case, huge basketball fan, like you said, and he's a real junkie, and he can tell you why he named Shaq Barkley and Pebble Got a Pause, his his song there. And it just, I was always struck, and I still am amazed by this wide reach that Charles Barkley has had in his whole life. I mean, I never expected to interview someone like Vice President Dan Quayle for a book on Charles Barkley, or a former CEO at Publix for a book on Charles Barkley, or someone like a Sheriff Joe Arpaio in Arizona, the very controversial and racist sheriff out there, about Charles Barkley. But each of these people, good, bad, indifferent, has been touched by Charles in one way or another. And honestly, it just blew me away how many people he has touched in his whole life. This is only a fraction of the people too. I mean, think about so many of the stories you just don't know about. So if that was a goal of mine, just getting as many Barkley stories as possible, because he's lived enough lives, honestly, for like 4 or 5 people.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. So last question. This one's a bit of a difficult one, so try and do your best with it. But I'm curious about your thoughts on this. I understand, like, there's people are like writing books all the time, and there's editing, and there's publication schedules. I understand there's all these kind of things happening in the background. But this fall, we had this weird trend in sports books where your book, Barkley, came out. Barkley, of course, did not win an NBA championship. We had Chris Herring wrote Blood in the Garden about the 1990s New York Knicks, which is one of the great basketball teams.
Awesome book, too.
Yeah, awesome book. But again, they got to the finals, didn't close the deal. I already alluded at the top of this conversation. Jeff Pearlman wrote Bo Jackson, who was playing 2 sports and didn't win in either one of those sports. And so we've had this weird kind of trend where, like, these are prominent players or prominent teams, and they didn't win. And sports is usually dominated by those who win. That's who we make the documentaries about. That's who we celebrate. That's who we talk about. You and I were talking about the role model thing a little bit. That's partly where that kind of comes from as well. So what do you think of this trend where we are kind of just focusing now, like for this, at least for this window of time, on prominent athletes that are great, but, you know, not quote unquote great, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I do think it's a coincidence in terms of just that those books should just actually being bunched together like that. But I will say I've always been interested in people who are not losers, but who have lost in big ways. And I think that's very fair to say about Charles and obviously Bo and those Knicks teams. We remember them so fondly, not because they lost, but the fact that they were able to just kind of take our breath away, and the fact that we still talk about these guys and these teams all of these years later. I mean, would it have made that much of a difference if Charles Barkley won a championship? Would that change the way we talk about him now? It would definitely change how much Shaq makes fun of him each week. But
Yes.
like,
Google me.
Google me, Chuck. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it did, but if you think about the life specifically Charles Barkley has lived, would it have changed that much with a championship? I don't think it would. Obviously, I would have loved to have seen him get one, but as more and more time goes on, I do think we appreciate more these people who did not win championships, but who got their teams to as far as they could possibly go and still be great at the same time. And I do think that's what we've got here with Charles, and the fact that he was an 11-time All-Star, 2-time gold medalist who's been inducted into the Hall of Fame 3 separate times. I mean, you've got this guy who is 1 in a million, and you'll just talk about him just losing or not winning an NBA championship. And I do think people will always be fascinated with people like Charles Barkley if they have done as much as he's done, and the life he has lived since playing. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer that even if you don't win, you're always going to be enamored with that guy, with Charles Barkley.
Yeah, all right. That's a positive point. We can leave it there. Thank you, Tim, so much. The book is called Barkley, as we've kind of said it a number of times, but the book's called Barkley. It's out now. And this was so fun. We covered Barbecue from Leeds, Alabama, Loki, Don Rickles, Orson Welles, Conan O'Brien, and of course, the man himself, Charles Barkley. Like, that again, just that all those things kind of fit together is surreal, but yet it all makes sense, and that's Charles Wade Barkley.
That really is a beauty of Barkley. Even the absurd will make sense and put a big smile on your face. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Thank you so much, Tim, for hanging out. I really do appreciate it. And thank you for the book. It was fascinating because, as I said, I'm old enough, so I watched Barkley play on the Sixers, and I didn't really know what happened, how they kind of fell apart there. I knew they had Dr. J. I know it was towards the end of Dr. J and Moses Malone and all that, and I just didn't know what happened. And of course, I, like most people in the 90s, I loved that Suns team with Thunder Dan and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right? That was a special NBA team, another one of those, we were talking about the 90s Knicks, that was another, classic NBA team. But again, it was just Jordan's era and Jordan's time, and it just was one of those unfortunate things where, even that Jazz team got there twice and couldn't close the deal. And that phenomenal Sonics team with Sean Kemp crashing and destroying everybody. No regard for human life. It was a good time of the NBA, so thank you for that nostalgia trip, just to kind of go back and fill in those blanks and see what happens. and kind of get some distance.
My pleasure. Yeah, it was so much fun just writing this whole book and just reliving a really cool time in history, just all around NBA history. You reel off all of those names and teams, and we're talking about some of the greatest players and teams ever, and it was just a privilege on my end to be able to write about all of them and so many other things, because that's Barkley's life right there.
Mm-hmm. By the way, a quick tangent. You talked to Shaq, or you had some connection with Shaq and stuff. Was Shaq able to get the book to Barkley, and like, did Barkley ever get back to you, or did you ever hear back? Like, that's a 6 degrees of separation. You know what I mean? That's pretty close.
Yeah. So I did interview Shaq and Shaq's mom, Lucille, who was actually best friends with Charles, his mom, Charcy. So we got both Shaq and his mom in interviews for this book itself, and in terms of the endorsement that appears on the front cover of Barkley, that's something I went back to Shaq's team and said, "Hey, we want to do this." Or he interviewed him. I was very transparent about the whole thing. I'm like, I don't have Charles on board, but he knows exactly what the book is going to be, because I had reached out to Charles and his team before I interviewed a single person with an 81-page outline of the book itself and chapter by chapter breakdown. So he knew what the book was going to be years ago. So after I spoke with Shaq's team, they were able to give me an endorsement from Shaq, which I'm super appreciative of. And I did send books to everyone at inside the NBA, so they should have copies of it now before the holidays. So we shall see. What they say. But even if he doesn't say anything, that's totally fine, because this whole thing has just been an honor, and in some ways it worked out better without him, just because he's already said so much in his life, and I was able to just kind of pour through these TV interviews and radio interviews and podcasts and everything else he's done to make sure his voice is represented in there, because what good is a Charles Barkley book without Chuck himself in there?
True. Your book was frustrating in a sense, because I would be reading some of the TNT stuff, for example, and then I'd be like, oh, I gotta Google this, like the police presence, right? Like in the, I think it was the Rockets Clippers game.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, the police presence.
That's my favorite. Yeah.
Right? So like you start reading in the book and like, oh, I gotta put this down. And then the San Antonio Big Old Woman, like I remember all these bits, right?
Yeah.
Putting his head under the water, I think it was David Blaine, and he wanted to see how long he could do it. Right, and Kenny
on a fish tank.
Yeah, and Kenny's in the back just egging him on, and like, you know what I mean. But all that stuff, like I start reading the book, and I'm like, I gotta put this down, Google this, and like go back to YouTube and like police presence and all that stuff, right? And you're like, I'm just dying, and like it's so good.
Yeah, and that was something I wanted to just have fun with, and because there have been so many of those incredible moments, and being able to just kind of type out some of them, it just made me laugh the whole time, to be honest with you.
Yeah. All right, I've taken up a lot of your time, but congratulations to you, to anybody that helped you with the book, the editors, the transcribers, all that stuff. High five to you and the team. So thank you so much for the book.
Thank you, Sammy.
Yo, what are you saying? That was Timothy Bella, a staff writer for the Washington Post, and his highly recommended book is Barkley, a Biography. I'm Sammy Younan, host of My Summer Lair. You gotta admit it, that was a fun interview. Every day, there are creators and podcasters like myself who are putting the time in and could use the encouraging boost of a positive comment. This isn't limited to just me, but if you have something nice to say, please leave a comment or how about a rating? Trust me, the creators in your life will appreciate it. Don't be stingy with love, yo. I'm going to close with a trick question. How many words is police presence? If you're Charles Barkley, it's 3 words. Police presence. Inside the NBA doesn't do this as much, but they would take brief and often hilarious moments from the show as audio and then set it to a 70s style Fat Albert cartoon. This is the cartoon audio of the police presence. It kills me every time. It's ridiculous. Like, that you can watch an NBA show and end up with this wild comedy bit is incredible. I don't take any of this for granted. I'm so grateful.
Does the Clippers against the Rockets ring a bell? What happened at the end of that game when it was over?
The locker room incident.
Oh, yeah. Audio tune. Uh-oh.
Well, it was an emotional, chippy game, and it did spill over into the hallways. The team is gone. They've all headed to the bus. Actually, outside of their team bus, there is a police presence just to make sure that nothing else develops or escalates.
Hello, police. Chris Paul trying to beat me up. This is Blake Griffin. Chris Paul trying to get in the locker room. Get down here and save me. Hey, this is Jordan. Mike D'Antoni trying to get in the locker room.
I certainly doubt that it was Clipper players who were requesting any kind of...
Somebody had to call the police. 2 guys who would relish guys coming in their locker room. Come on, man. I played in the NBA for 16 years. And I've been on TV for 18 years. It's the first time I ever heard police presence. They got a police presence? Are you kidding me?
Nobody was trying to get Patrick Beverly.
Nobody was trying to get Patrick Beverly. Chris Paul wasn't trying to get to Patrick Beverly. That's Patrick Beverly for real.
I'll post a video on the show notes for this episode at mysummerlair.com. Police presence. Amazing. Thank you for listening to me in a Barkley world. Police presence, yo.